But we begin this hour in the Eastern Cape, where two women accused of abducting premature babies from Dora Nginza Hospital are expected to appear in the new Brighton Magistrates Court today. The newborns, who were just 2 and 4 days old respectively, were taken from the hospital on Tuesday, but later recovered and returned to their mothers. The suspects have since been arrested. For more on this, let's bring in SABC News reporter Lerato Fekisi, who's watching developments for us at the new Brighton Magistrates Court. And Lerato, when this happened, there were obvious questions that emerged around how you can just walk out possibly with newborn babies in a context where those are the very individuals that should be protected.
Absolutely, and I think some of those questions, Ayanda, were actually answered yesterday during a media brief by the MEC of Health, Ndokazi Apa, who pretty much explained, based on information she has gained from the hospital and the police, who are still investigating the matter, of what transpired. And Ayanda, it goes like this, that on Tuesday night, a lady who had gone to previous tests at antenatal clinics, had been told she's not pregnant, Ayanda, found her way into Dora Nginza Hospital, registered her name as someone else, and by virtue of registering herself as someone who is pregnant, had then got access into the maternity ward. She then proceeded to go into the nursery, where she told the ladies who were breastfeeding, the moms who had babies there, that they should stop breastfeeding and that they should walk out because perhaps their kids or babies are now full. She then proceeded to put the babies, who, like you said, were 2 days old and 4 days old respectively, into a bag, and then used a separate exit to leave the hospital with the babies. Upon arrival at her house, through circulation of her CCTV footage, pictures of herself on social media, the neighbor saw the bag on the floor, also identified the lady as someone who was her neighbor, and asked her why these babies were at her house, and asked her to then accompany her to the hospital, where the babies were later then reunited with their mothers late on Wednesday afternoon. And when asked, the MEC, in terms of security issues at Dora Nginza Hospital as to how someone is able to register themselves under a false name and by virtue of that is granted access into the maternity ward, she said the matter is still under investigation, Ayanda, and at this stage that's all they can tell us, as the intricacies as to where the security breach was perhaps broken cannot be confirmed as now, but all she can say is that she's very much aware that this was a planned kidnapping of those two kids, perfectly orchestrated by the suspect who's going to appear in court this morning.
Goodness gracious me, this really sounds like an absolute nightmare, given some of the details that you've just described. And what do we know, if anything at all, Lerato, at this stage, about how these two moms and their babies are now doing?
One of the moms, Ayanda, is actually a 16-year-old, and yesterday we got to have a conversation with her cousin, who have been interviewing and talking to throughout this ordeal, and she did tell us that the 16-year-old is not coping at all, Ayanda, because prior to her giving birth, she was informed that her biological father had passed on, and by virtue of that, she then had contractions, and that's how she gave birth to a premature child. So while she was in hospital, she was still fighting the fact that, or trying to come to terms with her father's death, and then substantially to that, her son was abducted and later returned, and tomorrow actually she has to lay her father to rest. So you can imagine the trauma of experiencing all that within a 3-day cycle, having your child return to you, worried that he might not be alive, and then having to bury your father at the age of 16. So both mothers are still traumatized. Both children are okay. The MEC did confirm yesterday the children, both of them who were prematures, are back in the incubators, are back also receiving high medical care from specialists in Dora Nginza, and are doing well in terms of health. But the moms are very much traumatized mentally, psychologically, emotionally, still traumatized by the ordeal. But the MEC also confirming that they are also still both receiving psychological help and psychological support from the Department of Health.
Goodness, there might be even a case of statutory rape somewhere there. Lerato Fekisi, so many layers to the story. Thanks very much indeed for that. Lerato, live to us there from just outside the new Brighton Magistrates Court.